Ubisoft becomes the world's most hated game developer, competing with Capcom and Game Freak. I had no idea who Game Freak was, and apparently they are the ones who make the Pokemon games. So I understood why people hate them, because they don't really improve the games. In my opinion, the Pokemon games are very lazy. The gameplay is nothing special, the story almost doesn't exist. I don't know, I think they can do a much better job, but they prefer to rely on the Pokemon brand. Because people will buy it if it says Pokemon on the label. It doesn't matter how lazy the development of the game was. But anyway, apparently Ubisoft is number one. And I have no idea what to say. I mean, sure, Ubisoft makes a lot of boring games. The side missions are useless and boring. In the main missions you usually go for point A to point B and then from point B to point C or point A again. It's just a lot of walking or riding or driving. They just add some random monsters or collectibles on the maps to make it seem like it is interesting. Lazy game design. Anyway, you may say, what about EA? What about Blizzard? What about Namco? Well, I agree. But I also think that people are a little tired to always say EA sucks. And I think our expectations for EA are always very, very low. At least my expectations are, and I always ignore EA. I don't care about what games EA releases. And I think the only people who really care about EA are the FIFA fans. So I think people care more about Ubisoft because they still have some expectations for Ubisoft. But they are failing over and over. They are milking the Assassin's Creed game way too much. And we don't really see the game, at least the story, improving as much as we saw in the first games. At least I don't find it interesting. Watch Dogs was overhyped and downgraded. And the story didn't have anything special. Watch Dogs 2 was a little better. I mean, the gameplay was better. But the story was all over the place and I don't think they managed to do anything good with it. And Watch Dogs 3, they already gave up on everything. You could play whatever, with whoever, and whatever. I know, I said whatever 2 times, whatever. But come on, they didn't even try to make a story, they didn't even try to make a character. They just did a lot of random stuff during the Watch Dogs 3 and they expected people to like that. How can you like the game if you don't really have a main character? Anyway, and what about the Zelda Breath of the Wild clone? I mean, at least that's what people expected to be and wanted to be. But Immortals Phoenix Rising was a big failure. I didn't play it, but from what I saw, they just had some boring puzzles. The action and gameplay wasn't that awesome. I didn't hear anything about the story, and I didn't really see anything interesting. It is a very boring game, and I don't really hear people talking about it. Anyway, my point is that Ubisoft just released a lot of failures. And the only game that I really enjoyed from them, and I really wanted to be a huge success, was the game For Honor. But the game was released full of bugs, and some characters and powers were overpowered. So that became a huge failure really fast. And I know from the development part they knew about the issues, but they still insisted on not doing anything about it. So, okay, that is bad, but there are some other gaming companies that do worse than this. So how did Ubisoft become the most hated game developer? Well, apparently they calculated the hate rate of negative tweets and ranked the brands by location and category to find the most hated brand in every country. This is what rave reviews said. And apparently they also found out that Uber is the most hated brand in the US and the UK with 48% and 47%. And what's interesting is that the video game company Game Freak has a 100% hate rate in Canada. Wow, 100%. I expected Japan to hate the Pokemon company Game Freak, but apparently Canada hates it more for some reason. And apparently Sony is also the most popular global brand that is the most hated in the most countries. Well, first of all, let's remember this is from Twitter. Do we really care what people on Twitter have to say about brands or content or anything? A 5-year-old kid can go on Twitter and say anything they want about the company. And a very small number of people really uses Twitter. And most of the people who uses Twitter use it to say bad things. And of course, if you're a huge brand, they will talk more about you. But that also doesn't mean it's not true. I mean, I agree, Ubisoft is slacking off. They are very lazy with their writing and they are very lazy with their games. They just make very, very generic stuff. And Sony, what do you expect from Sony? They started with the censorship, they started banning, they started refusing games just because they are too sexy or whatever. Why the fuck does a gaming company has to decide for me what I want to play? As long as it's something legal, why not let the consumer decide what they want to buy or play? Or even if they want to see boobs or not in a video game. Why does Sony has to do that? Fine, maybe make an option for the developer to make a checkbox for the people who don't want that. Let's say they release a censored and uncensored version of that game. Or like I said, make an option to check a box and everything should be blurred that looks like titty or I don't know, ass. And I didn't really make a video about this, but I will talk about this right now. Sony with their stupid commercials for play has no limits. What about censorship? What about paying for online? How about having a subscription active if you want to play your games that you got for free? How about an options that will help me to find the games that I love? How about the fact that they make it really hard for developers to make discounts? How about the fact that it's very hard for the indie developers to be noticed? How about the fact that I'm always forced to make an update? Or else I'm not able to play online anymore? Well, I'm sure I can find more things, but I think that's enough examples to be able to say Play has a lot of limits on Sony PlayStation. But let's be real, I don't think these are the most hated game developers or companies. I think these are the companies that people care most about. And of course, with a lot of attention, you also get a lot of hate. And let's be real, it's not like they don't deserve it. I mean, not real hate, but more exactly people getting fed up with Ubisoft, with Sony, with Capcom, with Game Freak. I mean, come on, Sony didn't do anything to improve what they have. Their games are more expensive, their consoles are hard to find. They show that they don't really care about the consumer or about the developer. Because guess what? The developer doesn't want censorship and the consumer doesn't want censorship. But yeah, you don't like that? Pay us $70 now. Anyway, you get the idea. Just like any other company, when they have power and they dominate the market, they start to become lazy and they stop caring about the consumer because they use their brand to sell you stuff that people will buy no matter what. But if you really want these companies to learn a lesson, I think the best option will be to stop buying their stuff. If they don't sell their bad stuff, they have to do better. But of course, maybe you love their stuff and that's okay, I guess. But you can see they don't really care about the stuff that they make. And you know their games can be a lot more better. But why should they improve their stuff and spend more money and more resources if they know people will still buy it? And I don't know, maybe the sales will not grow that much if they improve stuff? I mean, Candy Crush made a lot of money. Let's not forget about FIFA and most of the sports games. I mean, let's be real, if they make a lot of money doing nothing, why not? It depends on the developer if they want to be filthy rich for a lazy ass game or make a awesome legendary game that will be remembered forever but make less money. Don't get me wrong, I think they will still make a lot of money. Maybe trying to do it all will end up a failure like Cyberpunk. I think they wanted to do something better than Witcher and they failed because they wanted too much. I think it was a lot of stuff that they wanted to do and that failed. I mean, sure, they still made a lot of money, but what if instead they made a small game that made the same money or even more? But let's be real, it's also really hard to make a game a success. I mean, sure, a game like Candy Crush made a huge success, made a lot of money. But what about all the games that were like Candy Crush or even better, that didn't make any money, or at least not a lot of money? So yes, it's a huge gamble with video games. And this is why I expect more from indie developers. Because they try to be creative. They don't have a huge budget for motion capture, the greatest graphics ever made. They don't use movie stars or famous people. They don't have a huge budget for marketing. They just try to make a game that people will love, and they hope a lot of people will notice the game and like it. My point is that we should stop having huge expectations from huge companies. I think the future is the indie developers, because in the end you want a game to have fun. You don't buy a game to see how good the graphics are. Sure, it's a very nice future and it's nice to have, but at the end of the day you want to have fun. And maybe you even want an interesting story. And with indie developers you usually get some creativity. Somebody had a great idea for a video game or a story and they made a game. A corporation doesn't really work like that. They just think, oh, what do people want today? Oh, they want a female protagonist. Sure, let's put that. What other things they want? Oh, they want a new Assassin's Creed game and a Pokemon game. Sure, let's make an Assassin's Creed game in the world of Pokemon. Or the other way around. What else people want? Well, they also want a story and fun gameplay and no microtransactions. You know what? Let's not put that in the game. The budget is already big and I think people will buy it because we have Assassin's Creed and Pokemon and a female protagonist. I'm sure people will buy it. Why spend even more money to make the game better and give it a story? People don't pay money for stories or good gameplay. They just want the brand. Anyway, like I said, I don't think Ubisoft is the worst game developer. I think instead it is a very boring and mediocre game developer. But a lot of huge gaming companies are like that these days. Or they are starting to be. And why is that? Because the very good game developers and story writers and the good people working at the corporation are leaving to make their own company. Because working for a company like Ubisoft doesn't mean you have the freedom to do the story that you want with the gameplay that you want. You have to do what that company wants you to do. So a lot of game developers are fed up with that and they want to make their own games. And that's why I'm expecting more and interesting games coming from indie developers. And all the power to them, I wish them luck. And I hope they will manage to do a great game. Because if you love a game, that doesn't mean Ubisoft made that game. It means that somebody who worked for Ubisoft had a great idea and knew how to make a great game. And maybe he can make even better games at his own company or at other companies. So how about we support the humans, the developers, not the company, not the brand.